Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett here as we're in the final week of January. Final week, coaches out on the road recruiting before they kind of get back in and start mat drills and get some final pieces done. But also really the last opportunity that Nebraska could possibly add a transfer that could get here to start the semester. And because of the calendar here, they have a little bit more wiggle room than a lot of places because Nebraska they start about 2 weeks later than a lot of places now. But that's allowed Nebraska to be in a position to possibly add one more transfer. Rocco Spindler, a 23-game starter at Notre Dame, was in Lincoln for his visit on Tuesday and Wednesday. And guys, I think Nebraska, and we're taping here on Wednesday, obviously, so I know we have affiliates that air us later in the week, but I think Nebraska is in a pretty good position here to add another starting level offensive lineman from the transfer portal.
Now, I'm going to say, guys, and this doesn't matter whether he comes here or not. If he does come here, I think it'd be the most important of the transfer portal signees. Did you call them signees? I believe that, Sean. I know, Sean, we disagreed with this on on this topic on another show. I believe he's the most important. First of all, you start from the inside out in building a team. And this is a right guard that had started 23 games. He started all 4 games in the college football playoff. He's a high grader. He's a dude. He's a grown man. This is the exact kind of player Nebraska needs right now. Anytime, not just right now, anytime. I think he'd be the most important transfer portal get for Nebraska.
So the timing on all this, I mean, obviously for it to be at Nebraska and him getting enrolled in classes, like it would have had to have happened Tuesday.
Yeah, he's a grad transfer though, and there is a lot more leeway.
Okay, so he's got wiggle room there.
The credits is that is not an issue when you're and first of all, nobody, in my opinion, would ever just leave a degree of Notre Dame.
Good point.
I mean, if you're that close,
good point.
You're not leaving that.
No,
that's like it's a multi-million-dollar mistake.
Yep.
To leave a Notre Dame degree if you were that close. So he has that,
right.
And I think now the hurdle is he could get here and start this week at Nebraska. If he goes to Michigan or Indiana, the other 2 players, I don't believe he'd be able to go there until May or June. And so he would stay at Notre Dame and do a semester of grad school. And I think that there's probably that. And then obviously the money piece. And I do think Nebraska is willing to go as high as anybody to get Rocco Spindler.
They should be, because of what I said earlier. I think he'd be the most important guy. I'm not saying he'd be the highest paid guy of Nebraska's transfer portal acquisitions. The next would probably be Elijah Pritchett in terms of value, and then Dane Key. And you notice I'm going inside out. I mean,
you're talking just offense.
Yeah, just offense. But I would carry that conversation to defense. I think Pritchett would be more valuable, or excuse me, Spindler would be more valuable than any of the defenders. Not that they're not valuable, but if we're ranking them, I'm ranking him number 1 of these guys. I think you could say Pritchett didn't grade nearly as high as Spindler.
I just think tackle though is it's harder to find a tackle than an interior guy. And the price for a tackle is double the price for an interior.
Yeah,
that's for a top interior.
Yeah, but that's not. Yeah, I mean that's true. Now, Key, you could make a case for Dane Key too, but I go back to this. I go back to this. Big men are more important than anything in football. They're more important than anything.
Look at Ty Robinson and Nash Robin meant to Nebraska this year.
Ask Steve Sarkisian how he's built Texas. He's built it from the inside out. That's how he's done it.
Not a cute 7-on-7 team.
No, I mean, no, and in this league, you have to do it that way. That's why Rocco Spindler is incredibly important, I think.
So how realistic of a player is Indiana still? I know he visited them, but they've added 2 offensive linemen through the portal. Like, are they still in the thick of it, or do you think things have kind of cooled off?
I think it's Nebraska or Michigan, if I had a guess today.
Not yet visited Michigan.
And if he visits Michigan, that's probably not a good sign.
Right.
I think the fact that he'd have to enroll and start early here to get all the money is probably. I mean, because Nebraska is willing to pay him, but I think they're willing to pay that number to get him here this week.
Yeah,
like I think the whole thing would change if he couldn't get here till June.
So but the bottom line in this conversation, it's a good sign that he's here.
Correct. Yeah, and that developed Sunday night, and our own Pete Nakos and Steve Wilfong reported that, broke the news on him coming in Monday morning for the Tuesday visit. So I can tell you, heading into the weekend, it didn't look like there was anything brewing with him. And then Sunday night it changed, and that's where the money and the NIL and his father played in the NFL, correct?
He was Mark Spindler. Spindler was a defensive lineman. He wasn't an offensive lineman. He was a defensive lineman. There's done talk radio in the city of Detroit.
He might get a show on the ticket.
Yeah, I think maybe.
I'm just kidding.
He was like 1990. He was 1990. So he was, for instance, before Dominic Raiola.
Okay, so changing the subject here on the line, like if they get Spindler, let's piece out the starting line. Pritchett, your left tackle. Your right tackle is probably Gunner or Teddy or Turner Corcoran. One of those three.
They're competing for it.
And then, I mean, Pritchett's going to start. He started every game at tackle for Alabama.
Yeah.
And, you go to the interior, I would assume you move Justin Evans to center.
Makes sense, right? Evans, who's, multiple game starter at guard, could easily. Well, I don't want to say easily. I don't want to diminish that challenge.
Played plenty of center.
Yeah, he's played a lot.
Corcoran could play center too. He's repped the position before.
But you would say then Evans moves into center, then the guards would be Latovsky probably and Spindler. And that looks pretty good. That looks like a pretty good line. Yeah,
that changes the whole dynamic. I still think Corcoran's the X factor, because what if he's healthy? What if he moves inside? Turner Corcoran inside to me is a lot different than an outside Turner Corcoran.
Well, we saw just his versatility, or that having versatility where you have a guy that can play tackle, guard, center, like how critical that is over the course of the season, because you're starting 5 line to expect them to stay healthy over the course of 12 plus games. It's not as realistic as some people might think. So having a guy like Corcoran, whether he starts or not, I think would be a critical piece. Just the fact that he can play at all 5 positions.
Yep. I mean, you're really watching closely how well Turner Corcoran and Teddy Prohaska return from those injuries. Latovsky and Gunner are out in the spring, right?
Correct.
Both those guys.
We'll get a full report from Rule maybe on Saturday, but we've been led to believe that both are getting surgeries and cleanup work done that would cause them to miss the spring. And look, what about Turner and Teddy? Like, what's their availability going to be for the spring?
Those are really critical questions for Rule.
So then also the Senior Bowl is this weekend. 2 guys, 3 Huskers in the game. Tommy Hill at corner, Thomas Fedoni at tight end, and Ty Robinson, the big name, at D-line. From all accounts, Robinson's having a good week. Tommy Hill's flashed. All 3, Fedoni. I mean, we've seen some promising reports out of practice from all 3 of those players, where I don't think they're hurting their stock in Mobile is probably the good thing to say right now. And I think if anything, a couple of them will probably at least help their stocks.
What a gigantic week for those guys. I mean, Sean has pointed out
it's bigger than the combine.
Would you say all the NFL head coaches are there?
Every head coach and almost all the assistants and almost all the scouting departments all go. It's somewhat the NFL's convention along with the combine, but Mobile is off the grid a little bit. I mean, so you go out at night. I told Sipple, you go out at night in Mobile on this week, Robin, and you'll see like a lot of people you'd recognize out at just having a good time, and like we would do at a convention.
Do you understand how big this is for those kids? This is Tommy Hill auditioning for a career.
You interview all 32 teams at the Senior Bowl too.
He's auditioning for a career this week. That's what he's doing. So the other guys are too. Now Ty's going to get drafted. There's no doubt. There's no doubt about it.
But where?
Right.
Like that's what this week is all about for him. I mean, he was already pretty much surefire draft pick, but now we're talking about him playing his way up to maybe a day 2 pick, maybe a day 1 pick, depending on how well this week goes for him, how well he interviews. Does he receive a combine invite? Like that's the next step here. And those are starting to roll out.
If you're in the Senior Bowl, you're a combine invite. Dude, Rob, 93 of the players in the Senior Bowl last year were drafted. It is the game of the game. It's first round draft picks to 6th, 7th round. I mean, 43% of the players drafted last year played in the Senior Bowl.
Okay.
So now the East-West Shrine and the other games, that's not a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the Senior Bowl that's why all the teams are there. That's why all the owners are there. When I went to the Senior Bowl, Jerry Jones was at practice. I mean, everyone's at that thing.
So we should see combine invites for Nebraska start to roll out pretty soon then, because I've already started to see like Rutgers had like 3 or 4 guys get combine invites.
So now you're guaranteeing that Fedoni and Hill are going to the combine.
I would expect them to, yes. If
you're guaranteed,
if you're at the Senior Bowl, the scouts want you at the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I'm gonna watch. That's interesting.
Jim Nagy works with the teams, and they. Tell me a guy from Nebraska that played in the I mean, I'm sure Michael Severe is going to text me.
I can't remember the games they played in. That's where like, what did a Zigbo play in?
Not the Senior Bowl.
Not the Senior.
You got to understand, like JoJo Doman did play in the Senior Bowl though, and he was not drafted, but he was a 6-year guy. Mm-hmm. Hymas played in the Senior Bowl, was drafted late.
It's big.
It's huge.
Yeah,
no doubt. So anyway, for Ty, like this is where like his real opportunity, like he's got the film, and I think he was a known commodity, obviously. But now this is where the separation happens, and how he performs on this stage against the best of the best. This is the opportunity on the field to show what type of player he is. But then I think one of his intangibles is just kind of that leadership factor, and the fact that he's gone through so much adversity and still made it through it. He stuck it out for 6 years. Like I think those are the types of things that when he's comparing one resume to the other, if you're an NFL team, you're going to see a guy that, hey, this guy has the dedication, the loyalty. He's been through it, and he's found his way to the top. I think those are the types of things that can be separators come draft day.
Tommy Hill, big. Obviously, he has the talent. I think you would say Tommy Hill has the talent, but he's got there's a lot he has to prove. Mm-hmm. And Fedoni has had 2 good years at Nebraska, but not. I mean, I wouldn't say they're exceptional years. 2 good years, right, Sean? 2 good years.
I mean, respectable numbers.
Yeah,
he was the leading receiver 2 years ago.
They're very interesting. I mean, Fedoni's a very interesting case to me because he was so highly rated coming out of high school, had the major knee surgeries. You didn't see him get all the way back, but clearly NFL people like him, and the picture's so good. He's such a good-looking athlete. His catch radius is so good. Come on, I mean, this doesn't just come down to how well he runs, how well he runs a 40. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, then there's the other off the field stuff too. Like I think that there's as much about like with the interactions with scouts and NFL personnel. Like that's what I think a lot of the value of these types of things are, is where they at this point of the year, most of these players are like they're the book's out on them as far as what they do on the field. What personnel want to know is what kind of type of person are they? How are they going to fit into what we're doing? And
the coaches in the Senior Bowl, Joel Thomas from the New York Giants is the offensive coordinator. Indianapolis Colts senior defensive line assistant Matt Rake is the D coordinator. So you have 49ers, Packers, Browns. But here's a little bit more data on that. The recent Senior Bowl is coming off 4 consecutive drafts with 100 players selected, which represents over 40% of the past 4 draft classes. Last year's game featured a record 110 players drafted, including 10 first rounders, and 45 of the top 100 picks played in the Senior Bowl. So, I mean, say what you want. Question Fedoni, this game picks the right guys more often than not.
Yeah. Well, you know what the beauty is? There'll be proof at some point.
No, they will be, and I'll be right, and you guys will have to say.
You're on the record.
All right, and if I'm wrong, I'll shotgun a cranium on the air.
Don't do that.
No, that may not. That actually may not.
Yep, save that
shotgun a cranium.
All right, when we come back
to that.
We're going to talk to Matt Rule Saturday, and we're going to ask him a lot of questions about the offseason. We'll discuss that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. This segment of the Husker Online Show brought to you by HelloFresh. It's that time of year. Look, you want to eat healthy. You want to do it right, but you don't have time to necessarily do it right. You don't have time to shop. You don't have time to find recipes. You got time to eat bad food, go through drive-thrus, order coffees with 4 Splendas every day.
That's not bad for you.
Multiple times a day.
I'm up to 5 Splendas now.
And you wonder why you have random things go wrong with your body.
That we keep moving.
But HelloFresh, if you're not familiar, they make it so easy to eat right, mix it up. They send all the ingredients to your house, the meat, the produce, the spices, the recipe cards. You get 40 or 50 choices every week. You can choose between speed, easiness, protein, vegetarian, you name it, spicy. They've got the combination for you. And we are going to give you 10 free meals and one high protein item for life at HelloFresh.com, Husker10F. That's HelloFresh.com, Husker10F. That 10F stands for 10FM, stands for 10 free meals. That's HelloFresh.com/Husker10FM, as we'll give you 10 free meals and a free protein item for the life of your box. You can order 2 meals per week, 3 meals, 4 meals for 2 people, for 4 people, whatever the number is. They've got the way to customize it to fit what your need or your family's need is. Thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. But guys, we are going to hear from Matt Rule on Saturday morning. And you're like, why Saturday? Well, Matt Rule is on the road all week. And, you can visit with recruits really all the way through Saturday if you want. But these are the only days he can be out until late in the season next fall.
So there's a lot. There's a lot to ask the coach. One thing you would ask him if they get Rocco Spindler is about Rocco Spindler.
Special teams coordinator.
Spring. What does spring look like? When does it start? When is there a spring game? Is there a spring game?
And that's become, Robin, the big topic now. I think a lot of people are moving out of the spring games.
What do you mean when you say a lot of people programs?
Yeah.
Some of them have been doing it for years. Like Iowa hasn't had a spring game
ever.
I don't know about
Minnesota
because you said that earlier, Sean, and I went to one back. Now it was a while ago. Well, so Nebraska joined the Big Ten. There was one.
They would do. It wasn't a traditional game though. They would just do an open practice.
Yeah.
They've never called it a spring game,
which I think is going to become the norm just because of the logistics with a 105-man roster. Like fielding 2 teams and having enough healthy players, especially at certain positions like the lines.
The lines.
You don't want guys that are already beat up to go and risk further injury for an inter-squad scrimmage. And so for other schools like Iowa, Minnesota, it's no big deal because nobody was going to come to those spring games anyway. Northwestern. But for Nebraska and other schools where the spring game is treated almost just like a real regular season contest by the fans and just the environment that comes with that event, I'm curious to see if what they can do to make that a little bit more special than just a practice, because they've done the open practices and they were fine. Like, remember the open practice? I think you guys were gone, but they did the open practice at Memorial Stadium and it was a good event, but it wasn't a spring game. So they got to find ways, I think, to be able to protect your roster and avoid injury while also putting on an event worthy enough to draw people from all around the state like they do every year.
I think you could just divide up with an offense and defensive team and do it that way, where you have a 1s group, a 2s group, and a 3s group, and just roll them out and not have. I think the challenge is dividing your team up into 2 teams and having enough to fill out it all. But if you can, again, though, would they tackle? The 1 year of Scott Frost, they did the tag off stuff.
It was awful.
People were furious.
It was awful.
You guys understand what we're talking about here? How big this is?
It is.
This is part of the fabric of Nebraska. The spring game is just part of our existence. It has been for quarter century or more.
Even the economy of Lincoln.
You know what? If there's people that run hotels listening to this right now are going, okay, this isn't good news. This is bad news. You mean we're not going to have 70,000 people at that game anymore? They may not even have it. Now, if you're Matt Rule, you have to be pretty smart about how you go about this.
Yep.
You have to kind of create a soft landing spot. You have, in terms of your public comments. And then I think you have to work up something that fans might look forward to, which is way easier said than done. I can sit here and say they need to work up something that would draw a fan. What do you do?
You can do open NIL practices again. Like a couple Saturdays, have like an earlier one and a later one where you pay, and then the money would go to NIL.
That's an idea. It's just, I just think it's in my mind, it's a huge story because it just became a part of our existence. The spring game was big. We treated it like a game. And now it may not even occur.
Central Florida's not doing one.
Yeah.
They announced that this week
Is that right?
with
They're
Scott
not-
Frost.
So like places like that, it's fine because no one was going to go anyway. But you come here, and like you said, it's ingrained in the fabric of this city, of the university, of the state.
Yeah.
Like, and to just say, oh, we're not going to do one. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah.
Like, you have to still have
Something.
an event, and like you said, Sip, I don't know what the right answer is. Like maybe you pair it with other sort of interactive fan event or whatever it may be.
Something, yeah.
Like you got to get creative to keep this thing special because it does mean so much to so many people around here.
Yeah, but you got to make it a true game to make it. I mean, it's not interesting if you make it like a carnival.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
but what do you do? I mean,
see, this is the staff meeting that's going to occur at Nebraska,
Yeah, what-
and it
what if
won't just be Rule, and it'll be Dan,
like
and it'll
7
be
offensive linemen that are hurt. Like, and you're going to try and play a 4-quarter game. Like, I just don't know how you do that.
well, you'd essentially have to have some guys that never would come out. They'd play almost the whole spring game.
and
And if you're paying
right now, go ahead, say it.
Elijah Pritchett
Right.
1.4 million or
Mhm.
something like that, well, the spring game itself made about $1 million. So you're paying more money to Elijah Pritchett than the spring game itself would net.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
It's tricky, Sean. You've pointed it out, and the thing that makes the most sense to me is the reason it's hard to do now is you don't really have a third string line that's viable.
You have these platoons of in-state walk-ons
right.
that you just kind of roll out there, and they would kind of eat the innings up of the baseball game.
Yeah,
you know?
it made it work.
They probably, a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half plus, those guys would take the load.
Mhm.
And then the ones and the twos would play about 2.5 quarters.
Yep.
But you kind of had a nice luxury when you had the bigger roster.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that anymore.
Nope.
And it's going to get smaller next year. I mean, like right now, they're hanging on to some guys for this semester. But by next year at this time, they won't have those.
There are certain realities that have cropped up as a part of this sort of new college football age, and this is one of them. The spring game's probably going to go away. Is my guess. Maybe Rule will tell us on Saturday. No, we're playing. I'll be very interested to hear what he says.
I still think you could do like an offense versus defense thing where you just have units get reps,
but not quarters, like 4 quarters of.
No, like just a running clock. Like, yeah, we're going to have 2 45-minute running clocks, and that will be the first half, and then that will be the second half. And you just play kind of a roll the ball out scrimmage. But again, I don't know if you're going to have your ones live.
Think about what we were saying earlier about the guys. Just when you just look at the offensive line, you're not going to have Gunner probably. You're not going to have Latovsky probably. We don't know about Prohaska and Corcoran. I mean,
like,
just took off 4 big ones, right?
Like, what if you just lost like Dane Key to injury in the spring game?
Which, I mean, that's always a risk.
That's always a risk.
And they got 2 guys hurt last year.
Bly Hill,
potential starting corner, and one of their promising young receivers, Demetrius Bell. So, like,
yeah, good point. Good point.
That's something you always have to be cognizant of. But with the limited roster numbers right now, it's more than ever. And I don't know. There is no easy answer to this conversation.
Maybe you invite like bad idea here, but just invite like UNK to come in and play a little bit too, and not play against Nebraska, but just like.
I think meant play against Nebraska.
No. Like
that's a lose.
Now you've heard people will bring up, how about bring in another team like volleyball? Like volleyball.
It's not like, I don't think you can do it.
Is it against the rules?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, who's done it before that you can
Nobody.
Name? So I don't think you can do it. I mean, it's.
Can you imagine the overreaction?
Yes, I can imagine.
Goes like 10 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown.
Well, I was thinking like bringing up Kansas State, and then the overreaction would be major. It'd be hard.
Risk all your NIL acquisitions in that game. No.
Yeah, for a scrimmage.
See, fascinating.
The money has changed it though.
Absolutely.
Like when you invest, I mean, you're paying players that you're signing more money than the chancellor of Nebraska makes.
Good point.
I mean, it's the reality. You have guys that make more than the AD.
Yeah,
that you're bringing in now.
Yep.
In some cases.
Right. It is. It's again, these conversations, it's still pretty early in the whole thing. And I think I'm glad we talk about it because there's reality.
And guess what? If they got hurt, you're still paying them.
That's what you said on a radio show. That's what hit me hard. That if one of those guys goes down, you're still paying him. You're still on the hook. Mm-hmm. It's not like you have a ton of money laying around either. I mean, this all speaks against a spring game. It really does. Mm-hmm. If they do a spring game, I guess I'll be surprised.
If they do, it'll be a shell of what we're used to.
be a stick fight. It won't be much of
a stick fight. I'm still getting over what Sean said about having random things. That's why random things happen to your body. Sean.
Just putting it out there.
You put like 15 Splendas in your body a day.
Just the aspartame flowing through your blood.
Ron Brown, 9 Splendas.
Hey,
Ron Brown.
All right.
Look at him.
That's a hard argument.
Yeah. Look at him.
When we come back, we'll pick up this conversation. The Michigan story continues to give. And Nebraska was actually in the latest reports out of Michigan. We'll share our thoughts on that next. You're listening to the Husker Online Show. Back here on the Husker Online Show, Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Wash at Husker Online Show, brought to you by Public Rec. And look, if you're not familiar with Public Rec, these are premium men's products, leisure wear, athletic wear. Who doesn't want to be comfortable? Put on a nice pair of joggers, sweatpants, quarter zip sweatshirts, you name it. They've got everything to fit you up right at Public Rec. And we've got some of the products, high-end, high-quality stuff, and we are going to give you 20% off of Public Rec. Go to their website, publicrec.com. Use that promo code Husker, and you'll receive 20% off. Again, visit the website. It's publicrec.com. The promo code is Husker, and as you can see, tons of great styles, size options, colors. Public Rec, thanks for sponsoring us here on the Husker Online Show. But guys, the Michigan story continues to get interesting. Some more reports and text messages and findings came out, and a couple things happened. Number one, Brett Bielema just openly went at Jim Harbaugh. Well, remember how close their loss was to Michigan? Like Bielema had them beat and was mad that was a really good Illinois team that year, and they lost that game. And then, Robin, the other interesting thing was about Nebraska, that the Connor Stallions text messages insinuated that Nebraska better change their signals. Otherwise, they're basically screwed.
Yeah, I'll read the blurb that Ross Dellinger reported in his they obtained a 137-page response to the NCAA that Yahoo Sports got about Michigan and Stallions. And they said, in a November 2022 text, Stallions suggested to Moore, I'm assuming Sharon Moore, that Michigan should change its signals ahead of the Ohio State game. Moore responded that he'll, quote, think about it. And Stallions responds that, quote, Nebraska is screwed, a reference to the fact that he could easily decipher the Huskers' signals ahead of the Wolverines game against them that very week. Michigan won that game 34-3, but Moore told university officials that Nebraska used wristbands, so there were no signals to steal.
This is what I've got from this. I mean, I read this entire Dellinger story. First of all, it's Ross Dellinger. God bless him. He's
putting in the work.
He does the Lord's work on this stuff.
100%. I hope he never goes away. There's not enough reporting like this. There's not. We're in a bad part of American history. Reporters are going away. There's not good, credible
Basically, the reporters now just aggregate his work.
Yeah, he does excellent work. The other part of this is, I'll tell you what, Michigan's not going down easy. They're fighting this. When you read it, you kind of come away thinking, I better not presume guilt on this, because that's what we're doing. We're presuming guilt. Another thing we do in this country readily now, the last 20 years, I think, is you're guilty until proven innocent.
The thing is, though, they still have the proof of Stallions buying those tickets for people to attend those games.
Here's an example of what I'm talking about. The University of Michigan contends that Stallions attended just one of those games, and that only 8 more of the 52 that are alleged were attended by a then Michigan staff member. Lower level managers at Stallions assigned to attend and presumably record sideline footage for his signal system. I have an unpopular stance on this. It's really unpopular. I almost hate to say it. I think it's overblown. It's
driven by Ohio State for sure, because Ohio State.
It was in-house tipster, though. It was an in-house Michigan tipster, that's a big part of this story now.
But didn't Ryan Day supposedly hire
misinformation?
And that was wrong.
Well, what this report is saying is that it was an in-house job, an in-house tipster tip Michigan officials off to it, and then it took off. A lot of misinformation in this. Michigan is fairly convincing in its contention that it's been sensationalized greatly. Now, I know you can come back at me hard, and people do. I don't know. And I'm not. Do you think Nebraska was severely impacted by this? You think Nebraska would have
34-3, and that game I remember they didn't look like they belonged on the same field.
No, it was ugly.
So maybe they stole some signs and got another touchdown out of it.
Didn't Nebraska go to wristbands that day?
That's the thing.
So what's interesting is the wristband quote, like a former Husker that follows me because we're mutual Giants fans.
Okay.
Noah Stefersky.
Yeah,
he never played, but he was a guy that was
Yeah.
on the team. He replied to my quote tweet about that Dellinger report with the Nebraska mention and said, I don't remember using wristbands. So a player on the team said that he didn't remember that happening. So who knows what's going on right now?
I mean, sign stealing happens.
Yeah. So what my retort to what you said, Sip, is that what I would like to know is just like what Michigan was doing. How prevalent is that? Like, how common do other programs do things like that, where you might think that it's overblown, and especially it might further that if you see that a lot of other schools are doing it. But if it is just a Michigan isolated incident, to me, my biggest problem with that is that it affects the integrity of the game. And you can argue about what degree it affects the integrity of the game, where you don't know if someone has a clear, unfair advantage to knowing and being able to anticipate what the other team is doing before the play even comes out.
I 100% agree with you.
That's my problem with it. Like things that mess with the integrity of the game, that opens up a Pandora's box.
Of course it does. I mean,
sign stealing is not illegal for the record, but to do it in the way they did it's what's illegal.
In person.
Yes.
I 100% agree with you on all of that. I'm just more open-minded. I want to see how this plays out. I'm not just assuming they're guilty, which
some pretty damning evidence, though.
Yeah, if you read Michigan's response, it's a pretty good response.
They got a lot of good lawyers.
Yeah. So I'm just keeping an open mind through it. It's and you don't have
more
to.
People should do that.
You don't have to make final judgment right now. Let's see Let's see how it plays out.
Okay, when we come back, Abby Barmore will join the show and we'll take your questions in the mailbag. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washington, Abby Barmore. It's time for the mailbag. But before we get to that, this segment of the show brought to you by Prizepicks. There is no better way to get into the action. And if you're not familiar with daily fantasy sports, Prizepicks is the largest platform in North America, and it is so easy. It's as simple as picking more or less in your favorite stat categories. It could be Travis Kelce is going to have more or less than 4 catches in the Super Bowl. It could be Saquon Barkley, Robin's favorite running back of all time, is going to have over 120 yards, more or less on that category. And you mix and match it, and you can win up to 10 times your money at Prizepicks as you put in the different combinations, and you can mix sports. It could be basketball mixed with football. Whatever it is, they will have the sport on there, and you can pick your favorite stat categories. And we are going to give you $50 for free once you make your first $5 deposit. Go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code HuskerOnline. That's put in $5. We'll give you $50. Use the promo code HuskerOnline at Prizepicks. Thanks again to Prizepicks for sponsoring us here on Husker Online Show. Okay, Abby, where are we going?
Okay, first one. Which position group do you think needs to improve the most in 2025?
Ooh, that's a good question. This is good, Sean.
I kind of think the secondary let me
one.
down last year.
Yep, that's a good one.
And
it's a good one.
They didn't do enough when it mattered consistently.
Yeah. I'd go special teams. Can I do that?
That's a good one.
Position group. I mean,
That's another obvious one.
yeah.
What particular? Kicking, snapping,
no, it's
punting?
simple. Snapping.
Give me
snapping, holding. I mean,
give me a position.
yeah, I'd say snapper and holder.
The battery.
Yep, the battery.
Receiver,
not John Hole.
So
I think they have
my answer.
Hey,
Sean, you didn't let me answer.
By the way, they have a kicker now. Nebraska has a good kicker. I'm not worried about Hole.
It's got to be snapped and held well enough for him to kick it.
The battery.
Yeah. So like I said, receiver would be my answer, just because the offense needs more of a downfield threat. Like the missed opportunities, and again, it wasn't all in the receivers; there were some missed throws, but just the lack of explosive plays generated from that position from guys not named Corey Barney was staggering.
And he didn't get you downfield much.
With the money they're spending to get in these big name receivers like a Dane Key, et cetera, like that position group needs to produce.
Corey Barney didn't have enough 20-yard plus plays.
Right. No, everything was underneath.
Yeah, you know who,
the field. I want to see some deep shots.
I guarantee you, one person that would agree with Robin is Dana Holgerson.
Yep.
I mean, he came in and obviously said, we got to change the wide receiver room. And it got done.
And the coach, he brought in his own guy.
Well, he brought in his own guy, right?
All right, next question.
Who needs to step up for Nebraska ball to get this team better on both ends?
I'm sorry,
Nebraska ball.
Oh,
Nebraska basketball.
Robin.
Oh, everyone. But like, I'll go back. I've been saying this for a while. I think the biggest X factor on the roster is Berke Bjornstjul because of the position he plays and the dependency on a scoring, facilitating five in Fred's offense. You look at when his team is playing its best ball, it's Derek Walker, it's Rink Mast. Like they need
100.
that guy. Braxton Mia is not that guy. Andrew Morgan is a great back to the basket center, but he's not that guy. Berke is the one guy offensively that can bring that element to the table. And if they get consistent enough 3-point shooting and or get him to be a better facilitator, life becomes so much easier for Bryce Williams, so much easier for Juwan Gary to get to the rim. Everybody around it, all of a sudden the 3-point shots for Connor Season start getting a lot easier, where he's not as contested every time he touches the ball. So like the ripple effect of Berke being consistently good is as dramatic as anybody on the team. And if they can get him rolling, then I think that's where it starts.
Can I throw one idea out? The one thing I would pick out, which kind of goes along with this, I think they need a third perimeter shooter. I mean, they have Bryce, they have a Season. It would be nice if they had one more that you could lean on.
Could have been Gage.
How about a 5 that can do it?
That'd be great.
Berke.
The other thing that they don't have now that was so impactful, I thought, when they had Walker, was that high post presence, a guy who could go left or right. And how many times did Walker get you a basket? You got the ball to him at the free throw line. He could go left or right. And then you just power
Rink
into
Mass was good.
Mass was good at that too, Sean. You're right. They don't have that. They don't have that
the passing for me.
Yeah.
Derek Walker was an exceptional passer.
Oh,
I think he was first or second on the team in assist. Rink Mass led him in assists last year. So like to have a passing big that can facilitate out of the high post, that's where Fred's offense is at its best. And especially if that 5 can shoot the way Rink could.
Good point.
Next question.
Okay. With the roster limit set at a hard 105, how do you think this will impact the high school recruiting? And how many is Nebraska likely going to take from now on?
Yeah, I still think you're going to be around 20 every year in high school recruiting. And, what we saw this year was probably pretty accurate. 15, 16 portal guys, that might be a little more than you want to do. And 20-ish high school players. And then obviously you're going to have attrition that follows. But there are going to be less opportunities for high school athletes to get a Big Ten football offer. It's just how the numbers are, where you can't really wait around. A lot of the recruiting is happening right now and it will happen in the spring. And by 4th of July, the spots are going to be gone everywhere.
Interesting. And in state, we're looking right now at 2 viable scholarship players.
Well, there's Isaac Jensen from Millard South, the tight end. He's probably the number 1 player, in my opinion. Jace Reynolds from Elkhorn North, a linebacker. Darian Jones, the brother of Donovan Jones, just got an Iowa State offer. And you're seeing Iowa State and even Kansas State kind of creep in here. And they play a little bit of a game sometimes, I think, to see if Nebraska will budge. And previous coaches would follow that up, but I don't get the sense that's going to happen. We've seen Iowa State now make 2 in-state quarterback offers.
Budge in what sense?
Oh, to pressure Nebraska to offer an in-state guy and then maybe fill a spot up in their class. And
wow,
like it's kind of a game.
Yeah,
you play a little bit, a game of chicken.
Yeah.
But like, would Iowa State take that guy at that second? I don't know. It's different in every situation, but
interesting.
Jet Tamala was offered by Iowa State this week.
Okay.
Millard South quarterback. Well, Nebraska's already got Dayton Raiola. And then Braylon Warren, Steve Warren's kid for 2027 at Westside, he has a few major Power 5 offers, Kansas State and Iowa State. QB as well.
Tamala, that was big. You said after Tamala got his initial offer, which was San Diego State, you said that was big because others would follow.
Yeah, usually an offer puts more eyeballs on you.
Yeah. That's a big offer, Iowa State. I mean, they're good.
Now the question is he their priority guy? Like, how many quarterbacks have they offered? And if they're only taking one, where would he rank in that pecking order? And that's where every school is different.
Okay, that's a good point.
And you might make 5 or 6, but you still have a priority list of who you'd want. And like, could he call them today and commit? That's what we don't know.
Right.
Because every one of those situations is different with recruiting. Let's see where we got on time. All right, Abby, final question.
Okay, our last question. If you could eat one candy for the rest of your life, what would it be?
First of all, if I had that option, I'd be just fine with it. If it's just one, I'd be okay with just eating Reese's the rest of my life.
Reese's.
There's a reason why stores put Reese's out, on that when you're checking through, and they can put a little cheaper Reese's out there. They'll do it
right next to the airplane shooters.
Yeah.
In the purple and orange.
Is that what they are? Airplane shooters?
In the purple and orange Mountain Dews.
Yeah. Well, you never see Three Musketeers sitting out there, right? You don't see Milky Way sitting out there.
You can't even find like small candy bars anymore. It's like king size or nothing.
That's my answer, Reese's. But I love chocolate. I just love chocolate.
Same. Give me chocolate over the fruity stuff. Yeah, I would do Snickers. Snickers is my all-time favorite candy. It's got everything you need: caramel, peanut, nougat, chocolate. I mean, what more do you need?
Gummy bears for me.
Gummy bears.
Gummy bears.
Probably
so you're not a chocolate person.
I'm sure. Chocolate's fine.
What kind of gum? Like just like straight gummy bears?
There's that.
Get the Sour Patch Kids.
The sour gummy bears are good, but just regular, like the Albanian or that, like the brand in the white bag. I forget what the name of it is.
I don't think Sean could do this with his daughter.
Whatever I swear it's called like Albanian or the brand of gummy bears.
Is it like Bambino or something like that? Or I know what you're talking about.
You know how many times my dad would be in
Albanese.
You know how many times my
I was not that far off.
Some Albanian
Haribo,
that's what
I was going to say. You know how many times my dad was in his recliner and he'd say, "Hey, get on your bike, go to Casey's and get some gummy bears," and I'd have to do it.
Your dad liked them too.
Yeah, I'd always have to make gummy bear runs. I don't know if he can send your girls out to
gummy worms are good too.
Yeah, I think I probably got him some gummy worms at times. But yeah, so I also had to make gummy bear runs. He'd be sitting in the recliner watching.
Sometimes when we go on vacation, you go to those like candy stores. You just kind of like get a bag and you fill it up. And they'll have flavors of stuff like that you've never seen before.
Yeah,
and then it's like $20 for a bag of candy.
Yeah,
because they charge you by the weight.
All I know is when I steal my kids' trick or treat candy, the chocolate is gone right away. And there's like a tier of chocolate, like Snickers, Reese's, they don't last. Then you go to the plain Hershey bars and the Three Musketeers and those types of ones. And then
the payday bars.
Then I moved down to like the Skittles and stuff like that.
See, I'm not sour candy
like
guy.
Stuff.
I'm not sour candy guy at all.
Chocolate all day.
What do you got, Abby?
I was scared you were going to ask me. I don't know if I can't really pick between chocolate and like gummy bears or like the fruity ones, I just like most of the candies.
Lay one out.
Do I have to pick?
Yes.
You asked the question.
I know. Sometimes I just hope you guys don't call on me.
We're calling on you.
Fine, I'll go with gummy bears. But Kit Kat's very close second.
Give me a break.
I love those.
When we come back, we are going to discuss some Nebraska basketball. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. Segment brought to you by who, Steve?
Larson Motors. Larson Motors. If you're looking for a new vehicle, we do this all the time. Why not go to Nebraska City? Why not go and experience Larson Motors? It's one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one location. We're talking about Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, the gamut. Start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people,
real deals.
Real deals.
All right. Well, Nebraska, obviously, we're taping here Wednesday. They play Illinois Thursday, but then, Robin, they have this big Pacific Northwest swing where Dana Altman will get his first crack at Nebraska since Creighton. I mean, I don't did Oregon did Oregon play Nebraska when he was the coach, or was that pre-Altman? I mean, I remember they came here.
Come on, Rob, dig
Playing
in.
the NIT one year.
No,
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, they played Oregon here, but I want to say they've played Oregon twice here, once in Omaha, and it was all way, way before Altman got there.
I'd like to think I would know this.
Yeah.
If I hate to think I'd miss that.
Okay.
I would have had to write about it.
Quick Google search says the last time they played was 2012-13 in Eugene, where Oregon won 60-38.
Good game.
So
Altman, was he there?
I can't remember when. I assume so. He's been there forever. And that's
2013 is a long time.
So this would have been 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he left for Oregon because I remember where I was at when it happened. It was like 2010 in the spring. He left to go.
Did he at one point went to Arkansas for
Oregon
one
was
day.
there in 2010.
2010.
So I remember I was at my wife's apartment before we were married, and I was trying to follow it, and like the local media was so caught off guard by when he left there. Like
left Creighton.
Yeah, I mean the World Herald didn't even have anybody like really, because Pivovar was working on. He was gone, the late Steve Pivovar, and I can remember Dirk Chatelain had to like step in and like cover that story back then because it caught everybody by surprise. I mean, nobody really was expecting Dana to leave, but that was Missouri Valley Creighton, but going to Phil Knight, Oregon at that point.
Yep.
And now obviously Creighton's.
Was that at that time? Didn't he take the arc? He took. I know. I'm
he
not.
Took it for a
asking.
couple days.
Yeah, a day.
Yeah, he had the press conference and everything.
Yeah.
He gave a woo pig.
Yep. And then how shortly after that did he go to Oregon?
Oh, he came back to Creighton for another year, but it was kind of like a weird. It's almost like you left your wife for a weekend and said, "I'm coming back,"
Yeah.
and then he ended up leaving eventually.
That's quite an example. Yeah, that.
I didn't like it. I'm coming back.
It's all right. It's all right. Can't hit every one of them.
Anyway,
so enough Altman talk. What about Nebraska? Well, they got a big one, and I guess it's hard to go too much into it with the Illinois game kind of hovering because that's an important one. It's at home, and this is a team that desperately needs things to go in their favor for once. They got to taste victory at this point. Like, you can talk about how well you practice, how the morale's staying up, and all the like real deep conversations you're having with coaches and players and all that sort of thing. It doesn't matter. None of it matters until you win.
Yeah,
and until you start doing the things that made you so successful earlier in the year when you were 12-2. And we're talking about, could Nebraska be a 7 seed, a 6 seed in the tournament? Like, that was less than a month ago when those conversations were happening. And something has just been taken out from underneath Nebraska to where they are not the same team or anywhere close to it from what we saw back in December. And so whether it's Illinois, whether it's sometime during this 2 games in 3 days out in the Pacific Northwest with Oregon and Washington, Nebraska's got to find a way. And then it starts with playing defense. It followed up by making the 50-50 plays and doing all of the little things, the winning types of plays that got them to that great start.
Okay. You touched on something that's really informative to fans, I think, and to media, to everybody, is how quickly it can swing, how quickly it can get away from you. It was January 4th when they beat UCLA, right? January 4th.
Saturday, January 4th.
Seems like months ago.
Right. But it was only January 4th. And that's when we were talking like, okay, this could get really interesting in a good way. It just has unraveled. That's the lesson. That's one of the biggest lessons I'm taking from this. Be careful. Now, here's the other thing. You wonder, can it swing back just as fast?
It can.
Go back
a couple of years ago, the 22-23 team, where they were just kind of plodding along and looked like things just, they were not even going to sniff the tournament. They ended up going 6-2 over their final 8 games and at least went into the Big Ten tournament with a chance.
That's right.
Before that 8 games, the season was over. And then they figured it out. They found ways to win, and they put themselves in a position where they entered the Big Ten tournament with at least a somewhat realistic hope or a path to get to the postseason. Now, they blew it against Minnesota in the first round, but at least they had the opportunity. I think if you look at this team, they just have to keep themselves in position where they have an opportunity. You cannot let this thing get so bad where you're going into mid-February or March and the season's over.
Right.
Like there's zero hope because, again, you might not even have the chance to go to Indy. With the new format of the Big Ten tournament, only 15 of the 18 teams make the conference tournament. Right now, Nebraska is on the wrong side of that bubble. Mm-hmm. Who cares about the NCAA tournament? They might even make their conference tournament. And if you don't make your conference tournament with the way that this season heading, that's your death.
Well, in the no-set Sunday year, Robin, Nebraska got hot late too. I mean, the Indiana and the Ohio State wins in the opening year of PBA.
Because they had a favorable back end of the schedule.
They were able to win those home games, and then that kind of ignited what we saw in February and March.
Yep. And that's what this schedule shapes up to be, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your final 8 games are at home, which in theory is a pretty significant advantage.
Washington and Northwestern on the road.
Right. So again, as bad as things have gotten and as they are right now, there's still opportunity, but time's running out, man. They got to figure it out.
Yeah,
if you lose your next 3, next 4, next 5, and you're going to Northwestern at February 16th, the season's already done. Like you're not even worried about what path you still have. Like you're worried about like
transfers.
Our players. Yeah, who are you going to lose from your roster, and maybe even your coaching staff?
All right. Well, lots to follow with Robin with Nebraska basketball as the Huskers will begin a very busy Pacific Northwest trip here after the home game against Illinois. For Abby Barmore, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, I'm Sean Callahan.